Good evening, I'm Dave Morris with News OK. And tonight I stand outside the Skirvin Hotel in downtown Oklahoma City. It's the subject of a new book written by Steve Lackmeyer and Jack Money. The Honorable Robert Henry calls the Skirvin Hotel Oklahoma City's magic mirror because it reflects virtually the entire history of Oklahoma City.
Our title actually is just one word, it's Skirvin. And to anybody who grew up in Oklahoma City, they have no problem, recognizing what that word is and what it denotes and, what it means today, which is, a really nice upscale place to stay in Oklahoma City, and it's a place to take your friends from out of town if you just, really want to impress them.
Lackmeyer and Money include many historical photos in the book, including an advertisement from the Oklahoman in 1911, boasting that the Skirvin is absolutely fireproof and has individual private baths.
Oklahoma City has, obviously had a grand romance with the operation ever since it started way back when, in 1911. And it's been a big hit with everybody in Oklahoma City ever since.
The Skirvin is actually 13 stories tall.
It's 14 if you count the basement.
It was, in fact, supposed to be a 6-story building, according to the original plans. Throughout the decades, many owners have desired to make the Skirvin a skyscraper, or at least nearby.
Well, yeah, they want to build a skyscraper next to it. Even the last developer involved with this, John Weeman, I think he had some ambition to do that as well. I think the crash pretty much put an end to that. But yeah, that's been a dream throughout the years.
W.B. Skirvin not only built a hotel, but also a tower. The Skirvin Tower is directly west of the Skirvin Hotel. The tower is now called 101 Park Avenue, and you'll notice a big difference in how the two structures look.
These days there is. In the beginning, when the Skirvin Tower was first built, they weren't identical, but they shared some strong similarities, as well as some interesting differences. The building was actually designed to be about twice the height that it ultimately ended up being, but because of turmoil going on both in Mr. Skirvin's life and turmoil going on in the economy, outside of Oklahoma City, those plans kind of got dashed. And just like you see, people involved with the hotel itself wanting to somehow do a skyscraper, subsequent owners of the Skirvin Tower had similar ambitions. There was a guy that picked it up from a local savings and loan association that wanted to take it up to its full originally designed height, but couldn't do it because the oil bust of the 80s happened. So it's and it kind of goes back to that magic mirror concept that you were talking about. When you look at these two buildings in particular, they are excellent windows into Oklahoma City's history and how events going on outside of those two particular properties still impacted how they developed and evolved.
But the reflections in Oklahoma City's magic mirror have not always been beautiful. Liquor by the wink, battles with unions, and segregation played an important role in the city's and the Skirvin's history.
I'd say one of the most difficult areas to have covered on this whole story was the Civil Rights era. It was not a place where you could enjoy the swimming pool, where you could eat in the Sooner Room, or where you could enjoy a special event in the Venetian Room if you were anything but white. And it was a painful time. And all too often, you see that era being portrayed as, forgive me, black and white. There's no gray area. Well, there's a lot of gray area. I think there are a lot of people affiliated with the Skirvin, both the owners and even the employees, black and white, who weren't sure what to do when Clara Looper and the children came to their front door. And it's easy for us to look back and say it was a cowardly move to lock that door. But after interviewing everybody, after looking at the record, it was clearly a very painful, turbulent era. It was the first hotel, I believe, that opened its doors finally to all races. And an interesting story One of the things we had difficulty tracking was Prentice Scott, very famous player with the Sooners. First black player, they'd really opened up the doors to integrating the team. And they had a tradition. Before every home game, they stayed at this hotel. Enjoyed the movie the night before, had a big steak and eggs breakfast that morning. And when Prentice Scott came with the team to stay here, the question was he allowed to stay here at all? And there was a lot of mythology. There were a lot of stories as to whether or not he had or hadn't. After doing research, after talking to people who were there, we've determined he stayed once. And there was so much controversy and so much confusion that was generated by that stay that pretty much ended not just Prentice Scott ever getting to stay there, but it appears as if that was the end of that tradition.
The Skirvin Hotel building was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1980, and that likely kept it from being demolished. It closed in 1988 and remained closed until February 26, 2007, when it reopened as the Skirvin Hilton, thanks to its good bones, historic ties to the community, and dramatic architecture, and under the management of John Williams.
We want to keep history alive and keep the memories of the Skirvin alive, and I think one important date to celebrate always is September 26th, the birthday of the hotel. We reopened the hotel February 26th, and we do things internally to celebrate that as well. Everybody has a Skirvin story. A first date, anniversary, special occasion, met their wife here, met their husband here, something. Everybody has a Skirvin story. And I think that one of the reasons why this hotel has been so successful, people really felt that we delivered a quality product, extraordinary service, and we've given Oklahoma City a chance to rekindle those memories and start a whole new set of memories. So it's been good for the city. The city's been great to us.
This isn't the first book for Steve Blackmeyer and Jack Money. For years, they covered Oklahoma City within the pages of the Oklahoman. And they wrote a previous book called OKC Second Time Around. So how much work goes into a book like this?
A considerable amount. We start with just the general idea of, well, okay, like in the case of the Skirvin, we've been asked to write about this. Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to go look for everything that's ever been written about the building, and we have to go looking for, any images out there of the building from its past, and we just spend a considerable amount of time researching out all that information. That generally can take, anywhere from 6 months to a year, depending on how much stuff you have to go through. Once you've assembled all that information, then you have to identify who are the key players in all that information, and are any of them still around? And in the case of the Skirvin and the Skirvin Tower, we found at least a half dozen people who had been, if not more, who had been intimately involved in its operation at some point or another in the history, who were still around. And some of them were a lot harder to find than others. So we found some just bam, just like that. There were others there was one guy that owned the hotel after Osman Sopta that we didn't find until about a year ago.
Yes.
And it took, so by that point we were 2 years into the project. And it was critical that we find him. And Steve, to his credit, really put forth the effort to track him down. So once you find these people, then you have to interview them and then collect materials from them, because a lot of them have old photographs or old mementos of some sort or another that you may want to include into the book. So you go through that entire process, and then you hand it all to a publisher who looks at it and says, you don't got it. You don't got it. You still need to do 15 other things, to make me happy. So then you go out and you do all that work, and you come back, and the publisher says, okay, I think you've got the topic covered now. And then he turns around and hands it to a book designer. And then the first thing the book designer says is look at the stuff and says, you don't got it. I need, 30 other things, and I think you should do this or do that. So then you've got to go do all that stuff.
Let me attach a couple of names to those people too. Jim Tolbert's Living History. He published our first book, OKC Second Time Around, and has seen enough of this city's history, witnessed it, that if he says you don't got it, you
You
don't
got it.
And Carl Brune won Book Design of the Year for our first book. He's extremely talented, and he makes us look good. When you look at that book and your first impression, if your first impression is, wow, that's Carl Brune, not us.
Yeah, that's all very true. So it can be a rather lengthy project. I'm really proud of our record on this particular book because it took us less than half the time to put this one together than it did our first one. So we're quite pleased with that.
You can read more about Oklahoma City's headquarters hotel by picking up a copy of Skirvin by Steve Lackmeyer and Jack Money. You can find it at local bookstores, including Full Circle Bookstore in Oklahoma City. For News OK, I'm Dave Morris.
Thank you.